What's up guys, and welcome back to the next part in how to market your indie game for free. The series where we literally take you through how to market your indie game for free, clues in the title. And as you can see, also from the title, this one is all about branding. Now we've done ADA, we've done our intro, we've kind of covered the very basics of social media. We're not done with social media yet, don't worry, we've got stuff coming up further down the line. But the idea is we're kind of going through the timeline at the moment of what you would do or how you would do things to set up for your indie game. Now, we're still miles away from launch, absolutely miles. So if anyone's thinking, come on, I want to need to know about how I get the game, how I build a contact list and how I outreach, and all that is coming, but we're trying to go through the process step by step. Now, you could argue that what we're doing now, the branding, this probably would be done before the social media stuff. But the reason I haven't done it like that is because we're going to be going on to Steam setup next. So the branding is going to be broken down into two parts. We're going to be doing the overview of branding today. And then next week, there's going to be 3 videos launched to kind of look at what we're doing today, but in a lot more detail in each section. And then following from that, we're going to be looking at Steam and how your branding will then move on to the development of your Steam page. So I didn't want to just throw social media in the middle of that and just be like, oh, kind of throwing it around here somewhere. So the branding and social media kind of merkling together. What I mean by that is once you've got your branding, you can then start branding your social media channels. But branding in video games, branding in indie games, what does it mean? And it's quite simple. It's how you're selling your game. Now, everyone I speak to, I say everyone, almost everyone I speak to thinks branding only comes down to visuals. Think it's a case of how's the game's logo look? How's the game's screenshots look? What's the color palette of the game? Which is very true. People will very much remember a game visually, okay? But branding is also, it's how you're selling your game verbally, how you're writing about your game, how you're talking about your game. That is all a big, big part of branding. Going back to the ADA route, so we got the awareness early on. The visuals help with the awareness. Visuals will get people going, oh, this game looks cool. When they start reading about your game, your branding of your words and how you're writing your blurbs of your game, that's what will turn that awareness and attention into interest, is how you're writing about your game. So we're going to look at today a very, very basic marketing/branding sheet. Now, to do this, I've decided to make a game. Yay! Don't worry, I'm not making an actual game. I am learning game development, but that's a story for a whole nother time. But what I mean by this is we're going to be, over the course of this series, I figured it'd be a lot easier if we're doing it with a game. So I'm making a game. Literally, fictionally making a game. This game is not going to exist. It doesn't exist. It's not in development. It's just a case of we're imagining that I've got a game. Any screenshots you see are going to be completely fraudulent in terms of they're going to be throwing together different assets or different photos or whatever I've taken off from other stuff in games. But it's not going to be an actual game, but it's be a nice way of us you understanding what I'm doing through a game as if I'm making a game. So the game we're going to be making is called Midnight Run. And what I've done now is I've put together a very simple branding sheet. And the reason I've kept it simple is because this branding/marketing sheet is going to grow with us over time. I'm going to be adding to it over the course of this series. So I don't want to put everything into it now. When I add to it, I want you to see what I'm adding and why I'm adding to it. So if we jump over now, we can look at the very basic marketing, the Midnight Run marketing sheet or branding sheet. And you can see here at the very top, what is Midnight Run? This is your kind of elevator pitch. Now this isn't final. What I've got written down here isn't final, but I'll read through it quickly. So Midnight Run is an 80s inspired rhythm racer. Races will play out to synthwave tracks, where players maintain speed by navigating a track to a rhythm of the song. The combination of switch between rhythm game and racer will increase the game's skill ceiling. Midnight Run will offer both a single player campaign, high score leaderboard, single runs. Aesthetically, Midnight Run will use dark to midnight skyboxes and let me start that again. Aesthetically, Midnight Run will use dark or midnight skyboxes and environments. The racetracks in the game will pop with bright neon colours, and cars will offer bold, solid metallics fitting with the 80s style and setting. So that is not the perfectly written out blurb. That is not my Steam's description. That is just me putting down what the game is. And that's really important, okay? Now, no matter what stage you are at in your development process, whether you be the game is an idea, whether it be you're launching the game in 6 months' time, if you haven't got a branding sheet or a marketing sheet like this, start now, because you'll see why it's so important over the course of this video. Now, that is in there as it is now. That tells us pretty much what Midnight Run is. I know now what Midnight Run is. It's a rhythm game that combines rhythm and racing. It's got an 80s aesthetic. It's going to be very nostalgic with its cars and its colours. And it's going to have a synthwave soundtrack. Cool, excellent. That's what I know. That's the blurb has done its job for now. It's got the early ideas of it. The reason this isn't so in depth right now is because as development of the game goes on, this will change. Now, I've put in there for now that the fact that Midnight Run will offer both single player campaign and high score leaderboard single runs. That might change. As we develop, actually, it might not offer the leaderboard high runs. Maybe I don't want to do that, but maybe it offers a different mode, a co-op mode that I found through development processes in there. So this isn't going to stay as it is, but it does its job for now. Now, if we go back to the sheet, you can see Midnight Run's reference material. This is just some screenshots, some visuals I grabbed off Google. This will help me with the color palette of my branding. Now, next video, we come back, you're going to see a whole logo for the game. You're going to start seeing some actual design visuals for the game. But they're going to come from these reference material. We can see we got the grid in the classic 80s grid, the vector grid in there. We've got a kind of triangular vector grid in there. We've got a very much image 1 and 3, very similar, but they have this is kind of a deeper purple color tone, which fits with that midnight of the game's title. And we can see then we've got some vehicles down there. I really want to emphasize the racing element of this game. So you want to tap into those vehicles. We've got some classic, we've got Ferrari, DeLorean, Lamborghini Diablos. This was the bottom right one, bottom left hand one was a concept car. Then we've even got nostalgia in there from Tron and even say like Knight Rider with Kit. Now, this again is just pure reference material. This is just a focus point for me. If I want to be branding my game, the game needs a logo. Okay, now the logo from day one might very much change by the time it gets to launch. But it needs something. It needs visuals. I need to be selling the game somehow. And I'm going to be using these as reference points. We know it's a racer. We know it's a rhythm game. We know it's set in the 80s. I've got racing. I've got neons. I've got vector grids. I've got 80s cars. I'm sorted. I can use these here as a reference point to start going forwards. So then we have to start asking, well, what's going to make Midnight Run unique? That's the next thing we want to know. What's going to make it unique? And we call these USPs, unique selling points. These are very important for you to know. And also, these will change over the course of your development because, as I said, some things will come in, some things will come out. Developers are notoriously stingy when it comes to selling points, or they focus sometimes their attention on the wrong areas. I give an example. If you're making an RPG dungeon crawling game, the fact that it's an RPG is not a selling point. An RPG is probably the most used genre in gaming. Almost any game could argue to some extent it's an RPG because it offers a way to play different to someone else. So I wouldn't focus too much on the RPG element. You need to break down a little bit further. If we go back to the sheet, we can see I've got 4 USPs for Midnight Run. And so far I've got down, well, it's a rhythm-based racer. That feels a little bit different. It's not a racing game. It's not a rhythm game. It's one that's combining those two mechanics together. 80s inspired synthwave soundtrack. We know that that's a bit of a niche market. Not everyone listens to synthwave music. Not everyone loves 80s music. But it's definitely a USP. It's something that makes the game unique compared to other racers or potentially other rhythm games. Challenging combo style gameplay. As we mentioned, if we go back up to the top, in the little blurb we said that the combination of switching between rhythm game and racer will increase the game's skill ceiling. I've put that in there because that's something I want to emphasize on. I want this game to be challenging because it genuinely feels like you're playing a rhythm game and a racing game. How that works mechanically, I have an idea in my head. How it is executed isn't finalized yet, so I don't want to go into specifics of exactly how that works. However, I do know from my USPs, the combination of the combo style gameplay, the rhythm and the racing, does make it a USP. It does make it a unique selling point to Midnight Run. And then the nostalgic inspired 80s vehicles. This obviously could be just the fact that I'm using a Ferrari California or I'm using a Lamborghini Diablo or using a DeLorean. It could also be a little more niche. Now, I'm not going to go and contact Knight Rider for full license and copyright to use kit. I'm not going to go get in touch with Paramount to go use Tron bikes. However, doesn't mean I can't have a car that slightly resembles kit in a loose way, or slightly resembles Tron bikes in a loose way. So I can still have those in there, and that's going to add into that USP, add into a unique selling point, because it's going to be crossing over with franchises that people are very fond of that era, or even people. I was born late 80s. I'm still very fond of that era, despite not watching a lot of that material until I was in my teens, in the early 2000s. Now, after USPs, we need to start working out, well, who's this game for? Who are we pushing to get this game to? Who's our main target audience for this game? So we move on to target audience. Now, again, I've got 5 down here. Again, this will grow as it goes on. It may even decrease. I wouldn't recommend it decrease too much, but we can see here we've got 5 examples of target audience. Indie game fans. That's a very branching audience. How do you know who an indie game fan is? If someone who plays Call of Duty all the time and then they end up going to buy Hades, are they all of a sudden an indie game fan because they really enjoyed Hades? It's a hard one, but we know that people who engage with indie game communities are going to be potentially people who we're going to be reaching with the marketing for Midnight Run. Fans of 80s pop culture. This is a big one for us, definitely. 80s pop culture it's niche, but hey, it's an audience. It's a big audience. People love nostalgia. If we can tap into that audience with nostalgia, that can carry a lot of traction for us. Racing game fans. This is going to be a tricky one because we've got rhythm game fans as well. How much of a rhythm game is Midnight Run going to be? How much of a racing game is Midnight Run going to be? We're definitely not going to be getting sim racing fans involved in the game. We're probably not going to be getting rock band rhythm game fans involved in the game. We're going to be somewhere in the middle over there. And then synthwave fans as well. Synthwave has kind of made a resurgence recently. There's lots of bands around, especially with stuff like Stranger Things being a thing now. There's lots of these kind of synthwave modern bands out there as well. So that's a whole new community to tap into. This is not my full target audience, just to point out. And just to stress again, this is a short branding marketing sheet, but this is going to help me build my marketing portfolio, my branding portfolio, to a lot deeper level, which we're going to see in later videos, or in the next videos. And then we're going to go on to games similar to Midnight Run. Now, this is probably one of the most important areas for you to focus on. And I'll explain why in a minute. So games similar to Midnight Run, we've got Neon Drive, we've got Art of Rally. If you're wondering in the brackets, they're the developers. Electro Ride, Rhythm Doctor, Sayonara Wild Hearts, and Avicii Invector. We've got some racing games in there. We've got some rhythm games in there. We've got games that are set in an 80s aesthetic. We got other games that are rhythm, like a racing rhythm game almost, or rhythm games play out similar to a racer, a little bit like Sayonara or Wild Hearts. Invector in there has a very nice, unique mechanic where you're twisting around the prism. So we got a nice variety in there. Now, the reason that having games and games that are similar to your game is so important is because these offer an incredible resource that almost no developers I speak to ever tap into. And what I mean by that is these guys have an audience. These guys have received feedback. These games have received feedback. Feedback that you can use to your benefit when you're coming up with the wording and the branding for your title. I'll explain now. So we're going to head over to Steam and go to the Sayonara Wild Hearts Steam page. More importantly, we're going to go to the review section. Now, I'm not going to go in depth here. There's lots of... We can spend hours on this. And honestly, when I'm working with a developer on a campaign, I spend days, sometimes weeks, doing this exact job. Now, what I mean when I say feedback is we're in the review section now. Sayonara Wild Hearts is a very good game. I very much enjoyed the game when I played it. It's overwhelmingly positive on Steam, which means it's had over 500 reviews and it's over 95% positive feedback. That is an exceptional feat for any game. So huge congratulations for them. But what we can do here is we can use the feedback in the community. Now, you're not going to use one review and then disappear and run away and go, okay, I've got my brand awareness for it. We want to be looking for repetition through these, but we're not going to go spend age on this because you'll get the idea from doing one. So let's look at a positive. Let's look at this top review over here, and it literally says, I never wanted this mesmerizing experience to end. This is a work of art more than a game. I had goosebumps throughout the whole experience. It was that amazing. I expect this to be longer than 2 hours, but you can just complete it in 70 to 80 minutes. But I can see myself coming back again and again. The gameplay included executing quick time events and collecting hearts to get higher score like a rhythm game, but they implemented this concept uniquely in every level. The OST is literally orgasmic. I recommend playing with a controller to feel the rhythm. Everything about this was beautiful, but I teared up at the end. Now, they haven't gone into key mechanics, but what we can get from that review is we can get, okay, the OST is big, right? We're going down the rhythm route. We need a soundtrack that connects with people. Not everyone's going to like the music in the game. Not everyone likes every piece of music. We need something that connects with them. They liked the addition of QuickTime events, but more importantly, they liked it how they were mixed up in every single level. So that's a real positive there. So we can take down as a note. Now, if we go down here, we can see just over here, there is a negative review, which kind of stands out like a sore thumb with all these positive reviews around. But let's read what they didn't like about the game. Even though the screenshots are amazing and visual aspect of the game is great, I wouldn't recommend it if you're expecting something more than a simple runner game. Once again, the visual aspect is great, but I would be amazed by it. But if I played on Switch or iOS as a very primitive gameplay, doesn't look fun for me if I play on PC rather than on the go on my phone. So what they're saying at the core is effectively that this is potentially feels a little bit more like a mobile game than a fully fleshed PC game. And that's something we can take into consideration. Also a simple runner game. So maybe the lack of mechanics, the lack of complexity to the game is something that put this person off in the game. Now, I've only looked at 2 very kind of quick reviews there, but you get the idea that what I can start doing now is I can start building up this consistency. If I read through another 5 negative reviews and it kept coming back that simplistic controls put them off the game, then, okay, there's not many negative reviews for Sayonara Wild Hearts, but still, if that consistency is coming back that simplistic controls put someone off the rhythm game, then it's something that I can make sure that I tackle. Not so much in gameplay, but when I'm wording my branding. If I end up putting down a racing rhythm game with simplistic controls, that might not be good because people aren't looking for that. Clearly, there's feedback saying that in a rhythm game, people don't want that, if that's the case. Vice versa, on the positive side, we know they like the soundtrack, and we know that they like the challenging or the mix-up of gameplay between levels. Again, only going off one review. But then branding my game, writing my game's blurb out back up the top, when I start refining my what is Midnight Run, I can start putting those in there. But it's a Midnight Run is a game that then utilizes and plays along to a fully realized 80s synthwave soundtrack. Really sell that OST because clearly that can mean something. Then talk about the combination of switch between rhythm, game and racer means that no level will ever feel the same. No playthrough will feel the same. We know that's a positive, and all of a sudden I can start using this feedback from other games to then really sell Midnight Run with its branding. Yes, we're miles away from having trailer, from having screenshots ready for the game, but I can still have my branding portfolio ready. So when I'm posting on social media, when I'm starting to sell the game, I have in my head exactly the words, the terminology that sell and that the community like in these genres and what they don't like. And having that arsenal early on, having those weapons early on is huge, and it can really give you a front foot over competitors, basically, because you've done your research. You know what fans of the genre are looking for because you've gone through it and you've gone through the Steam reviews. That's why I go back and say that Game Similar to Mid-Run is one of the most important sections because it gives you information that's readily available to anyone. Anyone can get the information in those Steam reviews. It takes a long time to do so, but I can guarantee you, if you do your research on them, when it comes to writing and finalizing and fine-tuning the branding for your game on a literal basis in terms of writing it out, it'll be huge. It will be so much help. I really mean that. And then how you read your game, how you're selling a game on paper, can definitely have an influence on how you're selling it visually when you come to creating your logo, as well as other screenshots and any other promo assets. Now that is going to wrap up this video. what we're going to be doing going through now, guys, is as we go on, so there's going to be 3 videos released next week. Those 3 videos are going to go through each section. So what is Midnight Run, the Midnight Run's USPs, the target audience, and the games similar to Midnight Run. And each video is going to be really honing in on that. Now, the last one will be the what is Midnight Run, because we're going to be building up the awareness of the USPs, really diving into that, diving into the audience, diving into the games similar to Midnight Run. I've really kind of tuned out on how I would do that for research, how I would do that for my brand awareness. All those videos released at once, as well as then going back and rewriting the what is Midnight Run to make sure the brand awareness is there. Once that's done, there will then be a visual video where you can see how I've taken what I've learned from Steam reviews, what I've learned from my USPs, target audience, what I've learned from my blurb of what is Midnight Run, and how I put that into a Steam key art image. So we can see how it kind of all starts to come together then. And then in a couple of weeks' time, we'll be looking at setting up a Steam page, not an official Steam page, but a fake Steam page for Midnight Run, so you can see how it starts looking as an actual product. But as a wrap up, guys, I hope you found some help in this video. We're really starting to dive into the marketing aspects now. I really enjoyed doing this series. If you have any questions, any feedback, please leave them in the comments below. I will respond to any comment that goes down there. It might not be instantaneous, but I promise I will respond to any comment down there. Have fun, take care, stay safe, and until next time, goodbye.